Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, I want to do a quick synopsis of the changes. The October 18th patch. What really changed for heat and what is the magnitude of change? We have a sheet here with number of heatsinks from 10 to 35. We have pre-patch numbers for capacity and dissipation, post-patch for the same. Then the changes for capacity in both absolute and percentage values, as well as the changes for dissipation. And then an equivalency, if you go from the old system to the new system, equivalently how many heat sinks you have on the old system equals the new system's amount of cooling. So before we go into these exact numbers, which is probably the best if you're on a computer monitor at 1080p, so you can actually read all of these. Of course, it's also in Spreadsheet Warrior, so you can just go there and play with the numbers yourself. But we should break it down into different categories because each different type of mech can carry different quantities of heatsinks and have different benefits and drawbacks from this system. I would say that the majority of lighter mechs, and specifically IS lights and clan lights and IS mediums, you're going to be around 10 to 13 heatsinks, simply because you lack the weight to take anything more. IS mediums are trying to take a light engine, specifically ones that are tanky, take a little bit more weight. You can put XL on some of them, and that gives you what you need, but you still want to take some firepower with that, so you don't have a lot of extra weight for additional heatsinks. Light mechs typically can only take around the 10 to 12 range. There are a few clan lights that can take a bit more, but those are exceptions to the rule. If you look at this first few here, there actually isn't much of a difference comparatively, because the base rate for in-engine heatsinks actually didn't increase that much, because they were already at true dubs. They were already at 0.2. The dissipation for your first 10 heatsinks is only going up by 10%. Whoa, geez, I screwed up my list there. There we go. 10%. A whole 0.2 dissipation. So comparatively to the last one, it's like you got 1.33 additional heatsinks, so you got about 11 heatsinks if you had 10 before. The capacity didn't change at all, 50 and 50, so 0% change there. And so if you were just running on your 10 heatsinks before, you got a tiny bit buff. You got a free ton, basically, out of your design. Nothing much else there. Most, say, inner sphere heavies, unless they're truly laser designs, but most inner sphere brawlers and mid-rangers are going to be around, say, 15 heatsinks for the inner sphere side. Clans for that size, you can probably be around 15 as well if you're looking for more of the, say, ballistic based that need that weight in order to put into their weapons. But if you're looking at energy based, you're starting to get towards the 20 mark for clan heavies, and some clan mediums as well, around the 15. So when you're around 15, we'll just take that as the clan medium IS heavy for the amount of heatsinks you can carry. You are losing a little bit of your capacity, -5. But it's only 8.7%. It's not a lot of your capacity. You still have over 50 capacity. You still can fire all of the weapons that those mechs can carry without much worry. But you are getting a much bigger increase in your dissipation, as while the first 10 only had that small increase, after that, it's gone from 0.15 to 0.22, so there is that huge, almost 50% increase, which means that your dissipation is now 0.55 more, or 20% higher, which is equivalent to getting 3.67 additional heatsinks, or it's like your old 15 is like, your new 15 heatsinks is like an old 19 heatsinks. So that's quite nice. You're actually getting a very, very large boost of cooling there. But when we go on to, say, clan heavies and IS assaults, With the IS double heatsinks being 3 slots, you can pretty much only get around 20. No matter how you build your mech, because you run out of space, you're gonna max out around 20 heatsinks for an IS mech. Now, you can build very specific mechs that can have more than that, yes, but in general terms, 19 to 21 is where you max out an IS mechs in the amount that you can carry, just because they're 3 slots. You get the awkwardness if you can't put them in legs, you can't put them in that extra bit in the center torso. You can only fit a couple in each side torso instead of being able to fit like 4. Just get awkward. But for 20 heatsinks, we can look at the numbers. We're still losing some of our capacity, minus 10, but it is only 15%, so it's not too bad. We still have 55 points of capacity, which is enough, again, to fire off what you can do at that point. But we're getting a whole 0.9 dissipation per second, which is a 25% increase. That's like getting 6 free heatsinks. So those 20 heatsinks that you had in your, say, Battlemaster, your 20 double heatsinks, is now like you've got 26. Not only for that Battlemaster or something like that, is that 6 extra tons that you've got. But that is 6 times 3, 18. Am I doing math right? Yes, 18 additional slots of value out of that, which is very big for Intersphere mechs. But it really truly gets silly when you start thinking about clans that can carry a lot of heatsinks. We have around 25 to truly maxing out around 30 heatsinks for most clans when they're looking entirely at laser vol. So my current laser design for my Marauder 2C has 31 heatsinks. But it's very specifically designed just to go mass heatsinks. Most of the time, you're going to be around 25 to 30 for laser-based clans. But you can see that while we do start to now lose a significant quantity of our capacity, we're minus 20% to 25% in that range. We're losing a total of 20 capacity at 30 heatsinks. We still have 60 capacity. I mean, we can still fire a pair of heavy larges, 5 ER mediums. Like, it's still possible to shoot that. Specifically, also, if we do the heat generation reductions, which most likely you already are if you have a laser mech and such. But where it starts to get stupid is in the amount of additional dissipation here, where we have like 1.25 additional dissipation up to 1.6 at 30 heatsinks. This is around a 30% increase. So that 30 double heatsink mech now is equivalent to 41 double heatsinks. I'll put some footage in here because I have a double large pulse laser, 5 ER mediums. I believe it's 5. 2 in the center torso, 1 in the right torso, 1 in each arm. Yeah, 5. Marauder 2C. It's one of my favorite designs. XL350, ton of double heatsinks, no endo, no ferro, because I want all the space. Playing on Caustic Valley, I believe, is the map that you will see. You just can't overheat. Like, you have to purposely hold down the trigger for an extended period of time in order to get anywhere close to overheating. It's ridiculous. I understand what they were trying to do with this patch. But I feel like they've gone too far. The whole thing with it being 0.22 instead of just 0.2 massively skewed these numbers so that mechs with already large amounts of heatsinks, like this Marauder 2C, have just incredible quantity of benefit from it. Like, it feels like that should be basic math. Yes, on paper, if you boost both IS and clans per unit by the same amount, it feels balanced. But the problem becomes the fact that class stop at 20 or so, and clans can go to 30 or so heatsinks. So, just by and large, if you increase individually by a certain amount, the one that can take more is going to get a bigger benefit. So, the inner sphere at 20 is only really getting, say, 6 extra heatsinks worth of value, while the clan at 30 is getting like 11 extra heatsinks worth of value. They're almost getting double the benefit, even though they're only taking 50% more of the heatsinks, because they're taking 50% more of the heatsinks that were actually boosted. Remember, the first 10 heatsinks that were in the engine are not being boosted by very much because they were already at 0.2. It's the external heatsinks that are really causing this difference. But the big thing I've noticed, specifically playing laser mechs and playing against laser mechs in the matches that I've had since the patch, is that you remove like one of the biggest problems that laser mechs had, and one of the biggest things you could do to defeat them was they didn't have upfront staying power. If you pushed a laser mech with SRMs and AC-20s and such, they overheated. They simply could not keep firing because they would use their capacity, and then they would just be like, well, look, I just have to stand here and take it while they pummel on me. But now, because you have like 40-something heatsinks worth of cooling on these clan assault mechs with all these pulse lasers and such, they cool so quick that there's no opportunity to push them. Like, it just takes a few seconds for my Marauder 2C to fully cool off. It's just stupid. It can fire its large pulse lasers on constantly while in the middle of the caldera in Caustic Valley, which has an additional increase in heat. So on an already hot map, in an area that increases your heat, it was able to fire 2 of its large pulse lasers constantly with actually losing heat. It was just ridiculous. So I think that's what we've lost here. Of course, they did say that they did not want to make it so that capacity was the only thing that limited the alpha strike and such. But I feel like it's been gone a bit too far. Of course, this comes down again to the differences between Clan and IS, because Clan can really stack these double heatsinks like crazy because they have smaller heatsinks and they have better upgrades, so they have more space. Where Innisphere can't, they have 3-slot heatsinks. That's one of their biggest disadvantages. Maybe I should run the math with Clan heatsinks at 0.2 and Inner Sphere heatsinks at 0.22. Maybe that's something we can look at. Changing those numbers between the different tech sides so that the Inner Sphere will have smaller but stronger, and the clans will have weaker but more heatsinks. But coming back to the Spreadsheet Warrior, we're going to pop into the double heatsinks versus single heatsinks, because I previously did a video on this where I said, are single heatsinks a thing? And at the time, yes, they were, because the single heatsink was at 0.13 and the double heatsink was at 0.15. There was only like a 15% difference or something like that between them. So it was realistic for you to go, oh, well, if I have 15 heatsinks and doubles, I have this much dissipation, and therefore if I take the same amount of singles for that, how many do I need to take? And it was only a few tons more. I can do that sort of thing. But it's pretty weak now, comparatively, because there's a huge difference between them. Singles have been buffed. They're at 0.14 from 0.13. But doubles were buffed from 0.15 to 0.22. It's ridiculous. So, even at just 10 heatsinks, we have singles at 1.4 dissipation and doubles at 2.2, which means that you would have to take an additional 6 tons of investment in order to get the same amount of dissipation. Because we can see the 0.22 here and the 2.24 at the 16 here. That's basically how it's calculated. So if you start thinking about realistic numbers, like you're going to take a laser boat, you're going to have 20 double heat sinks or so, 18, whatever, 18 to 20 is sort of like your range for IS assault mechs. You're going to need to fit an additional 10 or 11 tons on there. Like, it used to only be like 6, and it was acceptable because, you could make that fit. That's like the weight you get back from your endo steel or something like that, so you could work with that. But now this is way too much, in my opinion. I mean, it's still possible. You can still do silly things with it. But it's not as useful as it was before because you're spending way too much tonnage in order to get the same amount of heat dissipation. So single heat sinks, for quick play at least, not so much of a thing. But for the competitive, because they have the stock designs and such, the old double heatsink is essentially what the new single heatsink is. So those mechs should feel like the old patch, which is kind of nice. A boost to the stock mode for the tournaments. But yeah, that is my analysis of the patch. I think that it has gone a little too far in terms of dissipation. We've removed a weakness from laser mechs, which was the ability to push them and to pressure them. Now they cool down so goddamn fast that you can't really do that anymore. But that is going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and good hunting.